Julie, can you hear me? Commissioners, we're going to have a little bit of a delay, possibly starting the meeting. Secretary Gilliam is trying to connect with sound. She's having trouble with some of the city equipment.
That's okay.
Hey, Evelyn, this is Ken Rundle. I just wanted to make you aware I haven't heard back from Chair Kulik, so just be prepared if you need to run the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Crystal, I think Warren's on site. I'll see if I can send him over to Chambers.
Karen, could you let Warren know that she's going to try to call in from her iPhone so that she can get sound that way?
Okay, yeah.
She just hung up the iPad phone. Travis, I just see that you're joining us. There's some technical difficulties with the equipment in the room that Julie's in, so we're going to have to give her a couple more minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining us, Kelly.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
I've been admiring your cat in the background, Kelly.
Oh, thank you. That one's Bert.
Crystal, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is
Yes,
Julie testing. Can you hear?
We can hear you now,
thank
Julie.
you.
Okay, so you, whenever the commission's ready, we finally have technology working. Thank you for your patience, everyone.
Chair Kulik, whenever you're ready to begin.
All right, so we have the May 5th Youth Commission meeting called to order at 4:33 p.m. And then could the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, commissioners, when I call your name, if you could say present. Commissioner Blakely. Commissioner Burr.
Present.
Commissioner Colombo.
Present.
Commissioner Fu. Commissioner Fu, you're on mute.
Oh, are you able to hear me?
I can now, yes.
Okay, present.
Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Kulik.
Present.
Commissioner Pacheco.
Present.
Commissioner Sakai.
Present.
Commissioner Schneider.
Present.
Let the record show all commissioners are present except for Blakely and Gonzalez.
Moving on to item 3, could Commissioner Colombo please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then moving on to item 4, we have special presentations with Kelly McCormick from San Diego Alliance for Drug-Free Youth. Thank you for coming on, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. As you know, my name is Kelly McCormick. I'm a public health educator. I'm also a member of a County Tobacco Coalition. I'm the parent of a sophomore at LCC, and my daughter is a sophomore at UCLA. I have more pets than I should, so you'll probably see a few of them circling through here, and I apologize for that. I would like to congratulate the Encinitas Youth Commission on your work in helping to establish the ban on flavored tobacco sales in Encinitas. Your work on that was really important, and I want to make sure that, I thank you for that. And I also want to give you an update on things we're seeing now, the link between marijuana and big tobacco, in the way the businesses operate and in the kind of products that they sell. We're going to talk about the products themselves, what it does to brain chemistry, and we'll take a look at some of the studies that are coming out, particularly about marijuana use by teenagers and young adults. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and start the presentation. And I believe I am able to share. So go here. All right, so these, as I mentioned, are the things we're going to talk about today. And I want to start by taking a look back at history. As you know, tobacco companies make billions of dollars in profits from a wide array of different tobacco products and now marijuana products. It's been proven in court and through the release of thousands of pages of documents that tobacco companies engineered cigarettes to increase the levels of addictive nicotine. They denied evidence that cigarettes cause cancer and other harms to health, and they aggressively marketed cigarettes to young people because their own research showed that addiction is more likely to occur if use begins during the teenage years. I would like to note that a ban on menthol cigarettes was finally passed just last week, even though other flavors were banned 21 years ago. Menthol numbs the throat a little, so the tobacco smoke doesn't feel as harsh when it's going down. And let's go back to look at some of the ads. You can see menthol is featured in the ad on the right of this, attractive young woman who's in this grassy field with her dog, just having a great time. And, she might as well be eating granola. She's so healthy. And this character on the left, his name is Joe Camel. And if you were a kid in the 70s, or rather the late 80s through the 90s, everybody knew who Joe Camel was. He was as identifiable as the McDonald's arches. And they finally had to stop using those ads because of public outcry, because it was so obviously targeted toward youth. And you'll see those warning signs on those as well. Those were finally required by the federal government in 1966. They were forced to begin putting warning labels on their products and on their ads, indicating that quitting smoking would greatly reduce serious risks to health, that smoking was linked with cancer and things like that. So just taking a quick look at some of the documents that came out during those trials and those lawsuits that finally made it to court in the 1980s, they were able to get tons of documents from the tobacco companies. And among them were documents like this one showing that tobacco companies were actually studying the likes and dislikes of young people to find out what would appeal most to them. And here they talk about apples connoting goodness and freshness, and that teenagers like sweet products. And if you think back to the young woman in the field, what was the feeling you got from that ad? That was kind of connoting freshness and, something healthy. And just like the apple flavor, they were trying to make a connection with that ad. And so, as you may know, tobacco companies got around the flavor ban that I mentioned on cigarettes by putting the flavors into other things like the little cigarillos, which were not regulated in the same way by the FDA. So they made those, and those you can find, they're called Swisher Sweets, and they have other names as well. They're really inexpensive, and it was a way for them to get around the flavor ban. But when electronic cigarettes, or as you commonly call them, vapes, came onto the market, this presented a whole new opportunity for the tobacco companies. They could make vapes that look like USB ports or highlighters. So for one thing, they were easier for teenagers to conceal from parents and teachers. That's obvious. The other thing is that they look nothing like cigarettes, because the rate of smoking in the past 20 years has gone way down. Like it's gone down by 78%. In 2017, only 7% of teenagers were smoking. And so that was bad news for the tobacco companies. Teenagers were getting the message that it's unhealthy. They recognize that it smells bad. It makes your hair and clothes smell bad. Your teeth get yellow. So they were saying no thanks to cigarettes. But when vapes came along, they look completely different. They don't smell bad. And so there was none of that negative link that people had with cigarettes. And nicotine, we'll talk about more in depth, but that is the product that comes naturally in tobacco, and it's added to e-liquid and e-juice. It is what gives people the little high, the little buzz that they get from smoking, and it's also addictive. The tobacco companies were adding higher levels of nicotine to cigarettes to make them more addictive. And you can see here the level of nicotine that's in the various vaping, nicotine vaping devices. 41 cigarettes worth of nicotine in a jewel pod. In a puff bar, it's 50 cigarettes is the equivalent. So just crazy amounts of nicotine that they're adding to these products to make them more addictive. And now here's where we go to the business side of things. Tobacco companies are big players in the e-cigarette market. They own big stakes of most of the big e-cigarette companies like Blue, like Juul, many of the ones I could name for you. And they also have been watching the marijuana marketplace. And so now that it's becoming more, let's say, acceptable, more states are loosening up the laws about marijuana use for adults. They see an opportunity to cash in. So in 2020, there was an article in Forbes, which is, a very well-known business magazine, about the tobacco giant Altria securing new technology in the marijuana industry. They spent $1.8 billion, and that's just one of the investments. There are many more. And then this article that I have quoted here on the right is from February of this year. And it says, after spending $1.8 billion to buy a stake in, whoops, it's covered up, to buy a stake in a multinational cannabis company in 2018, Altria is now applying pressure in the halls of Congress and at the state level to push cannabis-friendly laws, recent filings and reporting show. So what that means is that that Altria and other companies are spending money to pay lobbyists, to lobby Congress people to change the laws. They're paying signature gatherers. They're paying for referendums in states and cities to try to get laws passed that are more marijuana friendly. Why are they doing that? Because it's an opportunity for them to make money off of their investments in the marijuana industry. For them, it's all about the money. And so here's an ad, just to go back to that item we discussed about appealing to youth. This is an ad for a marijuana company for marijuana in San Diego. You can see the picture was taken in Balboa Park. Now, what age group do you think this ad appeals to? You can see this, young lady on her rollerblades, having a good old time. Actually, those are old school skates, having a good old time. Now, that ad, while I like to think of myself as somebody who's young at heart, that ad is clearly designed to appeal to somebody closer to your age group than mine. Okay, and when I change that, and we're no longer advancing here. Sorry about this for just a second. Here we go. Did not advance. Okay, we're back in business. So here you can see the local numbers from the latest Healthy Kids survey locally. And by locally, I don't mean necessarily just your district, but from this region. And the average age of first use of a nicotine product was 12 years old. So, I mean, that is so young. And the number of teens who in the survey responded that they had vaped nicotine was about 25%. That's consistent with national trends as well. Now, the good news of that is that most kids are not vaping or not smoking, and that's the good news, the good thing to keep in mind. However, 25% is still too high. The number of teens who reported vaping marijuana is 14%. And this is of great concern to people in public health and to parents and everyone that cares about young people, is that only 34% believe that marijuana can cause great harm. And that's significant because it's a big decline from previous years. So while fewer young people are perceiving it as a problem, it's actually more of a problem than it ever has been in the past, because now we have these high THC concentrates that are unlike anything that even existed in the past. In the past, the marijuana plant was maybe 1 to 3% THC, and THC is the psychoactive chemical that gives people the high. So maybe 1 to 3%. Now the plant has been genetically modified, speaking of GMOs, it's been genetically modified to be about 30% THC. And on top of that, they produce these concentrates, and those are, created through a distillation process. A lot of times they use butane hash oil, which is never something you would want in your body, but they use butane hash oil to render this distillate that is like 99% pure THC. And to be honest, the government is not even allowed to use that high of THC for studies. So, people who are using this are basically guinea pigs, because there are no long-term studies to show the true range of harms that this can cause over time. But there already are significant numbers of studies to show us what it's doing in the few years since it's been available to people. Whoops. This thing is acting a little crazy. All right, next. So let's talk about smoking, because whether you're smoking tobacco or marijuana, smoke is smoke. And there's a new study that just came out, building on previous studies, showing that secondhand marijuana smoke is actually more hazardous than secondhand tobacco smoke. And secondhand smoke is the smoke that is breathed in by people who are near someone who is smoking. And so imagine if that smoke is going into your lungs, considering that the chemicals in that are actually considered more hazardous than the chemicals that are coming from tobacco smoke. And smoking does affect every part of the body, basically, from your eyes through your teeth, your gums, your blood, heart, lungs, your bladder. I could go on, but I won't. You get the idea from looking at this slide that smoke affects virtually every part of your body. And here's just a look at the lungs. On the left, you see the lungs of a healthy person, and on the right, you see the lungs of a smoker. And, you know, I don't have to tell you, it's clear the difference that smoking has made in this person's lung. All that black stuff on the lung is an accumulation of residue and tar and other effects of the smoke that's breathed in to the person's lungs. And that's happening to the lungs, and it's happening to other parts of the body as well. And let's talk a little bit about the effects of vaping. Again, whether you're vaping nicotine or marijuana. You may have heard, I'm sure you've heard, of an injury to the lungs called EVALI. And that stands for e-cigarette and vape-associated lung injury. And vaping really came into the national news scene a couple of years ago when otherwise healthy young people all over the country began to die of a mysterious lung injury, and many thousands of others were hospitalized. And doctors didn't know what was going on, but they began to compare notes and discovered that all of the people with this condition called EVALI had been vaping. And most of them, but not all of them, had vaped marijuana. The average age for people who were coming in with EVALI was only 24 years old. And so they knew that this was a problem, and they tried to narrow down what could possibly be causing this. And they narrowed it down to a chemical additive called vitamin E acetate that is added or was added to some of the vape juice. And that's considered to be the main culprit, but certainly not the only culprit. And it's still under investigation because the e-liquids are not regulated in any way. Many of them come from China. There's no inspections. And there's just a wide range of different chemicals that go into these. So it's a very difficult thing to study because there is so much variation in what is actually in those e-liquids. So it's, you know, really kind of taking a chance when you use a product like that. And here's a look. I showed you the lungs earlier of a smoker. So now I'll share a CT scan of the lungs of a vapor. On the left, you can see somebody with healthy lungs. They look great. On the right, you can see the lungs of somebody with EVALI. You can see they're swollen and inflamed, and that is definitely not what lungs are supposed to look like. And here's a look at some of the chemicals that go into that e-liquid. The names in red are actually on California's Prop 65 list of chemicals that are known to be carcinogens and also cause reproductive harm, so that if a woman is pregnant, it can cause harm to the developing baby. And here's a look, an illustration of what vaping can do to the lungs. Even if somebody never gets EVALI, it still causes lots of other trouble for the lungs, including phlegm that builds up in the tubes that, you know, because it's trying to fight off this foreign substance that doesn't belong there. There's scar tissue. There's a weakened immune system, which makes it harder for the person to fight off infections. And we're seeing that with COVID as well, because people who vape or smoke are much more likely to have complications with COVID because their immune system is not as strong and not as able to fight it off. So now let's specifically talk about marijuana. A lot of people say, you know, it's marijuana, what's the big deal? Well, it actually is a big deal. You know, I hear people say, oh, it's natural, it's a plant. Well, poison ivy is a plant too, but would you rub poison ivy all over your skin? I don't think so. I want to talk about marijuana and start talking about addiction. Addiction is based on a chemical reaction. So when nicotine or marijuana reach the brain, it creates a flood of dopamine. And dopamine is always referred to, or often referred to, as the feel-good chemical. Your brain is wired to crave dopamine. And in people under 25, the response to dopamine is stronger than at any other time of your life. And the brain actually creates pathways to reinforce the behaviors that produce dopamine. That's a natural part of growth and a natural part of, the life cycle. The problem is that nicotine and marijuana give you an artificially high amount of dopamine. Your body responds in significant ways to this artificial level of dopamine. It produces less dopamine on its own because it's getting an outside source, and it creates new pathways to reinforce the behavior that's bringing that extra dopamine. For example, vaping marijuana. This is pretty much the classic definition of addiction. So at the same time that your body wants more dopamine, you're producing less. Over time, people will need the artificial dopamine just to feel normal. They will need more of it to recapture that high or that good feeling they first felt from using the drug. And some people will seek more or stronger drugs to try to get that feeling back or increase that feeling. But the truth is, if you just stop using, if you're addicted and you just stop using a product like, say, marijuana and certainly other stronger drugs, you will have withdrawal symptoms. You will feel terrible, and it's going to take some time for your body to readjust and start making its own dopamine again and, get back to a natural balance. And I was doing a presentation for some younger students recently, and they said, well, are there other things you can do besides, using drugs or nicotine to get dopamine? And the answer is yes, there are lots of ways that you can get dopamine naturally and healthy ways. And we can talk about that another time. I'd love to, but that includes even things like sports or being outdoors. Physical exercise absolutely increases the level of dopamine. So there's lots of ways to get a true natural high that is actually going to be a benefit to your mind and body instead of harming it. Now, doctors and others refer to substance use disorders as a pediatric onset disease. And actually, it's considered that way because 9 out of 10 adults with substance use disorder began smoking, drinking, or using other drugs before they turned 18. And again, this goes back to those neural pathways that are being created to reinforce that dopamine-seeking behavior. And the earlier and the heavier their drug use is, the more likely that person will be to have problems with substances in their adult years. Marijuana is identified as the primary drug of choice among youth admitted to county treatment facilities. And look at these ages. It's 12 to 15-year-olds that they looked at. And 91% of the boys and 67% of the girls were there for treatment with marijuana being their primary drug. We see that teen marijuana use is also associated with higher levels of other drug use. This is called a Samsa national survey. It's one funded by the federal government. And you can clearly see here the teens who did not use marijuana had a much lower level of using drugs or alcohol compared to teens who were using marijuana. And this is really something that I want to stress, especially with May being Mental Health Month. A couple of years ago, the U.S. Surgeon General issued an advisory about the harms that marijuana can cause to mental health, particularly for people under 25. Since then, other studies have confirmed marijuana's negative impact on the skills that are required for doing well in school, for example, like memory, thinking clearly, problem solving skills, all those things that you need to be successful in school. And people that use marijuana also have less control of their emotions. Notably, this often includes a higher likelihood of angry outbursts. And then if someone uses too much marijuana, they can have panic attacks. People say that it feels like they're having a heart attack and they can't breathe. Unfortunately, some people with anxiety or depression may try to cope with their distress by using marijuana, but the scientific evidence shows that marijuana use actually makes these problems worse. And finally, there's concern that marijuana is linked to paranoia and psychosis, and this is most strongly associated with daily or near daily use of high THC marijuana products. This illustration was taken from some things put out by a group called Johnny's Ambassadors, and it was started by Johnny's parents because sadly Johnny became a heavy marijuana user in high school, and even though he had been a 4.0, grade point average, great student, lots of friends, he started using high THC marijuana and dabbing, and his life completely changed. He began to have psychotic episodes, hallucinations. He thought people were following him. He thought the FBI was spying on him constantly. And tragically, it ended when he took his own life. And, his parents have turned their lives over to trying to educate people about this risk. So we're getting to the end here. So thanks for your patience, but I do want to point out that marijuana use is associated with higher incidence of suicidal thoughts. And you can see here that from this chart, teens who did unfortunately die by suicide, marijuana was the present in their systems in 1/3 of those cases, more than any other drug. So that is certainly something that would not be helpful to somebody who is already feeling depressed or anxious to think that marijuana was going to help them solve their problem. And we do have to spend just a minute here on edibles. We've talked about smoking and vaping, and some people will say, well, edibles are the solution. And while it's true that they won't fill your lungs with smoke or aerosol particles, edibles do have a different set of problems, including a higher risk of overdose. And here's why. Because edibles are going through your digestive system rather than the respiratory system, it takes longer for the THC to reach the brain. So it can take up to an hour before you feel the effects of an edible. And edibles are actually, they have a huge amount of THC. So a dose, maybe just one little teeny bite, or half or a quarter of one of those chocolate squares. So if you're sitting there and you don't know much about edibles, you might say after 10 or 15 minutes, I don't feel anything, I'm gonna have some more. And actually this tastes really good. I'm gonna have another bite and another bite. And then by the time it kicks in an hour later, you have seriously overdosed. And this is what sends a lot of people to the hospital feeling like they're going to die. And in fact, the rate of people hospitalized for marijuana-associated reasons has gone up over 800% in the last couple of years in San Diego alone. So it's having a huge impact on our emergency rooms, especially during this time of COVID when they're, needed to be used for COVID patients. And one more thing about this too, I do want to say, a lot of little children accidentally overdose on edibles because they find it laying around. Maybe it belongs to somebody else in their family, and they think it's just candy. They don't know any better. And so they eat this, and then they become very ill and are hospitalized from it. And finally, I can't leave you without talking about the effects of marijuana use and driving. Drugged driving does include marijuana. It impairs the ability to drive safely. You can't focus well, your peripheral vision is affected, you can't react quickly to changing road conditions, stay in one lane, all that kind of stuff. And last year, San Diego County unfortunately set a record for the number of traffic deaths caused by impaired drivers. despite less traffic on the roads due to the pandemic. And San Diego City Attorney Mara Elliott specifically called out an increase in the number of people driving under the influence of marijuana. In a recent survey published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, about half of the surveyed teens who used marijuana on a regular basis admitted to driving while high. That is shocking. So please, please, if you do nothing else, take this message back to your schools that it is not safe to drive under the influence of marijuana, and it is not safe to be the passenger in the car with somebody who has used marijuana. That is of utmost importance. And I do have scientific journals and articles and other resources I can share. So if any of you have more questions, if you want more information to take back to your schools or to anyone else, please contact me. I will be more than happy to talk with you and send you articles and whatever else you would like. And with that, I will stop sharing and come back to the screen. All right.
Kelly, this is Staff Liaison Rundle. I wanted to ask you if any of the commissioners have friends or anyone they're associated with that is dealing with an issue like this. Who would you say they should contact?
That is a great question. They can contact, if somebody is having a mental health challenge, they can contact NAMI. There are support groups. There are warm lines that you can call to talk to somebody and be referred to help. There are vaping cessation programs that can help somebody who wants to stop vaping. And what I will do is, if I can, send you an email list of various resources, because there are actually quite a few of them. And so I'd be happy to share those resources. But just off the top of my head, I would say, believe it or not, school counselors can help provide resources in a confidential way. So that's a place to start as well. Also, keep my email or text handy. I'm always happy to give out the resources that we have. There are many resources available.
Thank you, Kelly. If you send me that, I will share it with the commission.
Very good, I will. Any other questions?
Commissioner Sakai, I was wondering, how long does secondhand smoke stay in like a enclosed room, or does it just disappear once you can't see it anymore?
It does dissipate over time. However, there's something called third-hand smoke, which is the physical residue that sticks on things like the furniture, the walls, the floors. And that's one of the reasons that, if you say you travel to a hotel and you get a room that somebody had smoked in, you can tell even long after that person has left. Or if you rent a car, you can tell if somebody smoked in it, because that residue sticks, and it actually can't even be cleaned by normal methods, just like, scrubbing the walls or something. It really, with say an apartment or multi-unit housing, they have to spend thousands of dollars to try to clean those units after a smoker moves out because of all the residue. Good question.
And then Commissioner Sakai again, I was wondering, for children that do accidentally overdose on edibles, do they have any long-term effects that happen afterwards? Do they also get or something, or are there any physical issues afterwards?
Yeah. In the case of nicotine, children have died from drinking nicotine liquids, like e-liquids, because nicotine is a poison, and it actually is made by tobacco plants to kill bugs as a natural defense mechanism. And it's so heavily concentrated in the e-liquids that somebody can die from drinking it. And in fact, I went to a school district, it was like a county meeting, and they were talking about how to safely handle vapes that are collected on campuses. And, they advise using gloves to even touch it. They don't want people to touch it with their bare hands. And I would give that advice to you as well because of those liquids. And then who knows what other kind of things could be in those liquids. In the case of marijuana, it is generally not going to be fatal, but the child is going to be very sick. And if the parents don't know that they ate marijuana, you know, the hospital is going to have to perform all kinds of tests that are going to be invasive and uncomfortable and scary for the child because they're going to be trying to figure out what's wrong. And then, you know, who knows after that, you know, what kind of, you know, lasting impacts it might have on them just from going through that scary experience. Well, please keep my number handy. If any other questions come up, feel free to contact me anytime, and I will get that information to Mr. Rundle.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving on to agenda item 5 with oral communications. It doesn't look like we have any speakers for that section. So for,
Yep.
I'm sorry?
That's correct. There are none.
And then for agenda item 6, changes to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? I'm assuming there are none. So to agenda item number 7, approval of the March 3rd, 2021 Youth Commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
Commissioner Colombo motions.
Is there a second to the motion?
Commissioner Sakai seconds.
Do we hold a vote on that or I forget?
Yeah, for the record, just to clarify, if any commissioners were absent from the March 3rd meeting, they need to abstain from the vote.
I was absent.
The minutes only show Commissioner Sakai was absent from the March 3rd meeting.
I think I was absent too for that one.
That was from last month?
So last
no,
month in
no.
April, right,
Oh.
the April meeting was canceled due to lack of quorum. This one, we're talking about the March 3rd meeting. So if Commissioner Sakai was absent from the March 3rd meeting, do we have another commissioner who could second?
Commissioner Fu seconds.
All right, thank you. And I'll call roll. If you are in approval of the minutes, please state aye. Commissioner Burr,
Aye.
Commissioner Colombo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fu,
Aye.
Commissioner Kulik,
Aye.
Commissioner Pacheco,
Aye.
Commissioner Schneider,
Aye.
and Commissioner Sakai, do you abstain?
Yes.
Okay, and then so the records, it passes 6-0 with Commissioner Sakai abstaining, and we have Commissioner Blakely and Gonzalez absent.
All right, so moving on to action items, we have to discuss the work plan. And then I have it up, Mr. Rundle. I mean, if you want to present it to the screen, I can just do it from here, but if you just wanted the other commissioners to see it.
There you go.
All right, so for focus area number 1, civic engagement series, project. Any of the commissioners have anything to talk about that? I mean, I'm pretty sure we got most of it done just with the various speakers we had. All right, so for the second focus area, intergenerational recreation programming, do any of the commissioners have any progress on that one? Any progress to report? All right, I guess there's no progress on that one. For the third focus area, zero waste food recycling program, I don't know, I think I might have been absent for this one, but didn't we have someone come and speak on this? I wasn't quite sure. Does anyone remember if we had someone speak on that? Like to come speak to the commission?
Nope. Chair Cooley,
Nope.
if I may, I'd like to go back to the focus area number 2.
Yeah, of course.
So with this one, we're talking about a Zoom for registration. I think we're talking also possibly about the use of Zoom. It would be really nice if we could set a date to maybe even by the next meeting to have a tutorial for like registrations for a program, so that we show some progress in this area that we could continue to work on. So I know the Senior Commission meets on the 18th of this month. They'll meet this month as well, but Commissioner Sakai, Pacheco, and Burr, if you guys could get together and come up with a tutorial, and I will be able to help you and assist you through that, that would be really, really good. What are your thoughts?
Commissioner Sakai, so would we basically just make a video or screen record one of our screens showing how to do something?
What I would suggest is, yeah, you could do like a PowerPoint, something that you could share. We could set a date, or we could set a future date where we could do this via Zoom, and interested members can go ahead and register and watch and ask questions as well. So it'd be a tutorial, how to register in ActiveNet for a recreation program, for example. Also, how to use Zoom, the Zoom basics, those types of things. And we can set up a meeting, and I can assist you in developing that.
All right, so back to the focus area number 3 for the zero waste food recycling program. I don't have any progress to report on that. And it looks like, isn't Commissioner Gonzalez and Blakely are gone? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I don't have anything to report unless Commissioner Fu does. So then moving on to the 4th focus area, identify guest speakers for future youth commission meetings. So we just had Kelly McCormick in again. And I know earlier in the year, I wanted to bring in someone from the district to maybe talk about how we would do reopening. But I mean, that was back when no one had any idea what was going to happen. But I know SDA, and I'm pretty sure the entire district is doing 4 days a week. So that idea does not seem applicable anymore. If any other commissioners have anyone they would like to bring up. All right, so for the 5th focus area, we have the bike-in event, and the bike grant was canceled. So I don't remember if we ever came up with like a substitution for that one, or if we're just completely, that one's off the table now.
This is Manager Carlin. We're working on a bike video tutorial, and I am meeting with the staff next week that are working on this project. It would be great if we could get a couple of the youth commissioners possibly involved with this, but I can get back to the ad hoc committee after we have that meeting next week.
All right, perfect. So for the virtual park tour, so for the park, the Olympus Park, has that been completed yet? Or I think I remember there being like some significant progress on that one.
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Pacheco. So Olympus Park wasn't open, or it hadn't opened yet. So we decided to do the Encinitas Community Park, and then we also did the mosaic tiles underneath the Santa Fe Drive underpass a couple weeks ago, and then we created a video and it is finished. So if you guys want me to show that, I can share my screen and show it to you guys.
Go for it.
Okay. Can you guys see this? Yeah, okay. As a way to capture the history, people, and culture of the 5 communities of Encinitas, the city of Encinitas funded the public art project to create 53 mosaic panels on the Santa Fe Drive underpass. The mosaics were created by high school, college, and adult Encinitas artists. Each mosaic shows a part of the unique Encinitas community. Drive west down Santa Fe and you will find the Encinitas Community Park. Made up of 44 acres, the park has ball fields, a playground, plenty of open grass areas, and a dog park. Don't worry if you forgot a bag to pick up after your dog. There are bag dispensers placed all around the park. The multi-purpose skate park not only includes the authentic skate park elements, but also has a separate fenced bowl. Okay, and then that's it. So we achieved that work plan.
That was a good video. And then is that video is it posted anywhere or like on the city website or something?
So Chair Kulik, if I could chime in here, this is Manager Carlin. I'm very impressed with the quality of this video. You guys did a really good job on what you have so far. I showed it to our director today and she thought it was very well done as well. One of the things that we would like to do is we'd like to expand on this a little bit more. So we'd like to get sites like Olympus Park in there, possibly Cardiff Sports Park, things like that. So if that's something that this ad hoc committee could do yet during this commission cycle, it's we only have a month left, but if not, what we could do is we could actually bridge this over to the next session of the Youth Commission for next year to continue work on this. But so far what you have is great.
All right, so moving on to the next agenda item, virtual special event. Do Commissioners Burr, Colombo have anything to talk about when it comes to the virtual special event?
I personally don't have anything. I don't know about Commissioner Burr.
Yeah, I don't have anything either.
This is Chair Rundle. This is a really good opportunity with your work plan, commissioners, to take a look at this area with the virtual special events and what we talked about with the intergenerational recreation programming, where we talked about using Zoom to educate people on how to sign up for a recreation program through ActiveNet, and then also how to utilize and use Zoom. So these two could go hand in hand. It could be a special event where you identify your date of when you want to have this and all the connectivity as far as people being able to sign on to it. The ability, you folks putting together like a PowerPoint or something with all the information. And the other thing would be to then present to the Senior Commission the date and all the information so that they can get the word out as well. We would also promote this via social media, various things like that as well. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Commissioner Sakai, I think that's a great idea, so then we can just do 2 things at once.
So what I'll do then is I'll be following up with the ad hocs. I'll be contacting you to set up a meeting time where we can discuss further and then develop up our action plan and we can move forward with these items. That sounds good.
All right, so moving on to focus area number 8 with the Youth Commission mission statement. Does Commissioner Sakai, do you have any statement progress?
Commissioner Sakai, I do not, but I will work on it.
All right. And then that is it for the
Chair
work
Kulik,
plan.
this is Liaison Rundle one more time as well. That would be another area where I'll contact the subcommittee, and if we could work on that. We do have one more meeting, which is June 2nd. So we do have a little bit of time that we can work on that particular area as well.
Yeah, and then that shouldn't take too long either. So it's perfect.
You're on mute.
Look, you're on mute.
So moving on to agenda item number 9, we have the department updates from Manager Carlin.
All right, thank you very much. So there's been quite a bit of work done on the work plan, but just remember that we only have about a month left on the work plan. So, so Supervisor Rundle will be reaching out to ad hoc committees to make sure that we're finishing out these items on the work plan. So please be responsive to him as he's reaching out to you. In addition, I just wanted to let you know that we have hired a new supervisor that is taking the place of Supervisor Hernandez, and his name is Parker Anderson, and he's coming to us from SDSU. So he will be joining us for the next commission meeting just to get an idea of how the commission works, but he will be handling the commission next year starting in the fall. So he'll be here at the next commission meeting. We can introduce him as well. In addition to that, Olympus Park is open. We definitely need some help from the community because we do have some individuals that are riding bikes through the landscape, and we want to make sure that we keep that park beautiful. So if you're out there with friends and they are doing things like that, please discourage them from riding through the landscaping. Also remember, at Olympus Park and at every park, if you are on your bike, bikes must yield to pedestrians. That's very important to make sure that people know that the bikes do yield to the pedestrians. Also, you know, any type of paths and things that aren't allocated for bikes or skateboards, people should be keeping off of, including those transitional areas in Olympus Park. In addition to that, we've had a little bit of an issue in all of our parks with individuals not putting their trash into the different receptacles. So if you're out there enjoying the parks with your friends, please make sure that you're using the different trash receptacles that are out in the parks. And that will just help us to make sure that our parks stay beautiful in Encinitas. In addition, we started our summer registration, and the programming staff, our Parks and Recreation supervisors, including Mr. Rundle, have done an excellent job on getting that information out to the public and getting people registered for classes. I'm happy to report that we have about 1,450 students enrolled in our junior lifeguard program. That's more than we've had since I've been here at the city and I've been here for 3.5 years. So that's excellent news, and it shows that people are interested in getting out and doing something this summer. So we're excited about that program getting underway. And then also, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we are going to be doing some bike education, and it may include some videos. I'm going to find out if I can have the Youth Commission ad hoc committee for bike education and bike safety be involved in those videos, and then I'll get back to that ad hoc committee. And I'm available for any questions if you have any. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Manager Carlin, for the update. So moving on to the 10th agenda item, are there any commission member initiated agenda items? All right, so I'm assuming there are no agenda items. And then for the 11th agenda item, are there any future agenda items added by the commission members? Looks like we're good on that. So then for the 12th agenda item, for the commissioner reports for the roundtable. Does Commissioner Schneider want to start?
Sure. There's nothing much really going on at my school. Last Friday we did go, the sophomores and the freshmen went whale watching as a school trip. And then today there was this thing where like you can bid on a senior and they can do whatever they want to. Like they will maybe say, oh, I will go get you food. And then you'll still have to pay for the food, but you can pay them to go get you food from somewhere. Or like it's a whole bunch of silly stuff, but nothing else that I can think of that's coming up.
Commissioner Burr?
The only update I can think of is that we've been going back for 4 days in a row recently.
Commissioner Phil?
Yesterday, SDA's boys and girls water polo each had a game. So the boys varsity water polo lost, but the other 3 teams all won, which is the girls JV and the boys JV. And it was against Classical Academy.
Commissioner Colombo?
The SDA beach volleyball team played against Santa Fe Christian last week and we won, which was pretty good. And SDA's been going back 4 days a week, but that's it, basically.
Commissioner Sakai?
Commissioner Sakai, LCC had a senior commitment day today.
Did you commit anywhere?
Yeah, I'm going to Chapman University. How about you?
I'm committed to Ohio State.
Nice.
Commissioner Pacheco?
The only thing I have that you guys haven't said is that the SDUHSC just appointed a new interim superintendent after Dr. Haley resigned a couple days ago, and her name is Lucille Lynch.
And then for SDA, the seniors are having grad night and prom combined and they're calling it GROM. And then SDA has their senior assassin with like squirt guns. So that's been going on our way. And that's about it. So then is there a motion to adjourn the youth commission meeting at 5? Is there a motion to adjourn the youth commission meeting?
Chair Kulik, we don't need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. The May 5th Youth Commission meeting is adjourned at 5:32 p.m. Thank you.